CEO Live Talks.
I am Dr. Swannie Jett, and I have a passion for public health for over 30 years. Now, I'm in a position to affect change, and these are the critical conversations about health in our community with the people who can help me make those changes. Good afternoon. Welcome to CEO Live Talks. I'm your host, Dr. Swannie Jett, and today I want to welcome my dear friend, Mr. Anthony Richardson.
How you doing?
What's going on, sir?
Yeah, man, not too much.
Welcome
man.
to the set. Welcome to the set.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I'm just going to start and get a little bit into, your background and your upbringing. Where you come from?
Where I come from, born and raised Louisville, Kentucky, more specifically West End. Born and raised, and I still currently reside in the Swannie community near Swannie Golf Course.
Okay. So would you say the West End is huge because it starts at First Street? So where exactly?
That's new to me.
Yeah, because everybody says it started on 9th Street. No.
I'm gonna even say 18th Street. But off 40th and Market, right near Swannie High School. Okay. That's where I was brought from home from the hospital, and that's where I was raised. Graduated high school, college. My mother still resides at the same house, and I just moved a little closer to the Parkway. So still right in the deep West End, Portland, Swannie area.
So when you were growing up, I know that time frame, the neighborhood was a little bit different. Mm-hmm. What was the environment like?
You say the word different, the first thing that came to my mind was, I'll say the word family and village. And what I mean by that is there was not, I feel like every house is a silo right now in whatever neighborhood, be it West End, East End, suburbs, whatever. It was more about community, meaning I could be corrected and policed by relatives, neighbors, friends, somebody who knew me or that knew my mother or knew my father. So I think that was the biggest thing. There was maybe a place of belonging for kids, doing right or wrong. You knew, like, you had pride in your neighborhood, and it wasn't like a gang mentality. It was just, this is home.
Right.
So what I call neighborhood OGs help police the neighborhood.
And so you went to high school 98?
I got my fall of 99 was when I walked into high school.
And so I was new to Louisville, so I was 4 years in, and I remember my fun memories, Swannie Park on Sundays. The OGs, we would sit there and have conversations and barbecue, and it seemed different. They still do it now, but it's not as prominent as it was then.
No, it definitely was a staple for your week or weekend, especially throughout the summer. Even as us as high school kids, some of us that started driving, you cleaned your car up and made sure it looked like something because we're gonna ride through the park, and it became a thing. Like, you go hang at the park. It would be shiny. You may commute down to Chickasaw, and then finally we would start migrating to Cox Park, and it became, let's waste our gas going from one end of Broadway to the next.
That's right.
But it was just something to look forward to. You still had. It wasn't definitely not as frequently, but sometimes there were shootings, sometimes there was fights, but it was more so about show off your car. Right. People was more so putting the best music, rims, interior in the cars
or
to show them off.
Your motorcycle, because that
wasn't even on my radar. Might have been moped for me. But yeah, no, it's just kind of a show off time, but almost a neighborhood. Well, I wouldn't even say neighborhood because there was people from other neighborhoods, right. But it was just kind of a family reunion on Sundays.
So how many siblings do you have?
I have 3 total. My mother and father had 2, meaning me and my brother Travis, and then my father had 2 older kids prior to my mother, James and Tamika.
So how was it having everyone in the household?
So that was kind of me and my older siblings, James and Tamika, didn't necessarily hang out together, if that makes some sense. They were older. I'm 39. James is 50.
Okay.
He just turned 50. And Tamika, we call her Mimi, believe is 46,
Okay.
47. But again, like it was kind of one of those, my father had other kids. I really didn't get to see my sister in a handful of times. Like we were able to go to, I remember like Dad getting a boat with one of his buddies he worked with. We go out on the lake, so he would have all three of the boys. But it still was kind of a broken relationship or whatnot.
Okay.
So we didn't become friends and siblings. I'll say like have a friendship to our siblings, being siblings until becoming adults.
Okay. Yeah, I would figure that would be a little bit of a strain, especially if y'all not in the same household. It's harder to build that relationship.
Yeah, and then, and this is no shun to any of the mothers, including mine, but they wasn't friends, and it wasn't a peaceful dynamic. With my father being in the middle, and the James had a separate mother, Tamika had a separate mother, and then me and Chavis had the same mother,
Right.
and obviously in the house. So, some of their feelings was, we got the father that they don't have.
Right.
So, some of that stuff, but it never was necessarily issues between us. We just never had a friendship or relationship.
Right.
So,
and it was probably a little bit of animosity that I can see, or jealousy, I would say, not as much as animosity, because they wanted their dad full time.
correct.
So, with that being said, there had to be some reason they was jealous. So, what did your father provide to you in terms of experiences and knowledge?
Mine would be love, and most of it was tough love. My father was always my coach, and my brother's coach. So I think he was the one who introduced me to football, which made me fall in love with football. But I would just say like showing me how to be a man in a way. Like I think he struggled with drug addiction all of my life until I became 18. He got clean my freshman year in college. So when he passed away in 2021, I believe he had 17 years of sobriety. So we struggled with addiction for him, and it was crack was his vice, but he was still present. Like I remember only one time he did not show up for an event for me. It took me into the age of 25 just to I guess know that I needed to express to him. Like I think that was the biggest hurt he ever caused me.
So I'm just curious, what event did he miss to cause such hurt?
So I already said like he was always my coach in Little League.
Right.
In 1998, my 8th grade year, I played for the Yellow Jackets that practiced right in you all's backyard at West Louisville Park. So I played for the Yellow Jackets. So we always won what was the Muhammad Ali League,
Right.
which was, just our division. But then all roads led to the Super Classic, which was every league's champion played in a playoff to determine who was the best in the city at this age group.
Right.
Every year, I think we played in it 5 straight years. We were the Super Classic, but we always lost to the Heights Point Lobos by 1 point, by 2 points. We never lost to them more by 6 points. And that was 4 straight years. So my final year in 1998 in 8th grade, we won. And my father wasn't there. He was on one of his drug binges. So I remember the hurt. I remember I probably sat and of course we was the last game because we were seniors. I probably sat on the field for about 20, 30 minutes just crying because my father wasn't there.
Okay.
And my mother said it took an act of God to get me to come off the field. But like I think that was the greatest hurt that he ever caused me. But again, it doesn't compare to all the things he taught me and the love he shows. But it was just, that one time.
My name is Dr. Stephanie Jacobs, and I am your Chief of Clinical Operations. I have been a nurse for 26 years. I have been in leadership for 18 years, and I absolutely love what I do. Park Duval is the employer of choice for me because I love the community, I love what we do, and I love the ability to be able to provide the amazing services that we do for our patients.
Hello, I'm Dr. Swannie Jett. Please make sure you visit one of our 5 locations, not only in Louisville, but outside of Louisville and surrounding areas. Thank you. You know, you in terms of counseling other people had to think about, in the back of your mind, these are things I'm not going to do. So in that aspect, it had to transpire into your life. This is how I want to live versus this. There was a conscious effort.
So one thing I consciously said, I wouldn't do drugs because, you know, they say marijuana is your gateway drug and then whatever else.
Right.
And because of my father being absent at times and causing the house hurt, like I was like, nah, I'm not going to do drugs because I guess somewhere in my head I was afraid of getting addicted and following my father.
Right.
So I can consciously say like that was one thing that I know it made me operate different. So like in college and stuff, people would be smoking and I'm like, I'm cool. Now, I would drink and partake or whatnot, but I would consciously like avoid drugs because I didn't know how it would make me feel. And then a lot of times, like I didn't give value to the word addiction.
Right.
Because me and my father would have arguments or debates or whatever you want to call it. I wasn't being disrespectful, but like, nah, you don't have an addiction. You're making a choice to go blow your money and do this, you know, because yes, we could want this, need this, desire it, yearn it, chemically need it or whatever. But at that time, uneducated me and insensitive me was like, you don't have an addiction. You just make bad choices.
Right. And it was the lack of understanding of how serious the drug is.
Correct.
Right. So what prompted you to play football besides your father? Because you have a very defined position.
The same thing I tell the kids. I always been big, aggressive. People commonly say, "Oh, you got anger issues." Like, nah, I don't have anger issues. Like, you've never seen me lost my cool.
Right.
You can see me get angry, but having, anger issues, like you can't control it. I can control it, but I could for 2.5 hours every day. I could go be violent, and nobody's gonna lock me up. Just, I desire to prove to you that you're not better than me, and then there's nothing you can do about it. So just kind of, that's how I fell in love with football, and I was always good. I started playing at 4 for Fly J Rams.
Okay.
And one of the coaches who was one of the bros, Fred Moore. He's man, I love Coach Moore. I mean, he just kind of, helped enhance what was already in me.
Right.
But, I was big enough. My father was the vice president of the league, so Huck starting to play football at 4 wasn't a problem.
Right.
Now there's 3 guys that made me an aggressive football player from the age of 4 on, because they abused me in practice. When I tell you abused me, it was bad. But I said Richard Whitlock, Deontay Smith, Greg Williams.
Okay.
And they're both like 2 years older than me. And every time I see them to this day, I tell them, "You're the reason that I'm out here doing what I'm doing and the way I played." I mean, seriously though, but at the age of 4, playing with 6 to 9-year-olds, I was a starter.
Right.
And it took about 3 weeks. After probably the first week of crying, like, I don't know if I'm gonna play this game. I started at nose guard. You know what I mean? One of the toughest positions to play, especially as a little kid.
Tough.
But I mean, I think that was it. Just my God-given ability plus the mentality of, I just wanted to destroy you and let you know there wasn't nothing to do about it.
So how did you end up at Male? Because
I tell you,
Mel was doing a lot of recruiting back then.
So. I'll tell you one person that we both know commonly, and I've told him this before, Ivan Green. Ivan Green, Chris Redmond, and those guys on Friday night flights. So I started my public school education going to J.B. Atkinson, which is in Portland. And my grandmother was the PO, plant operator at my school. So I just kept seeing Friday night flights in football. And first grade, you're 5, 6. So I told my mother, I want to go to that school, Male. So she put me, I believe in the 3rd grade, she transferred me from J.B. Atkinson to Great House Elementary, which fed into Barrett, which fed into Male. It was all, even at the age of 5 or 6, I knew football was for me.
Right.
So that was the reason. Seeing them dominate on Friday night flights every weekend or every Friday night, it made me want to go to Male. And so that's how I switched over and started on that trajectory.
And what made you change?
What made me leave Mill? The principal and I could not get along. So my sophomore year, now let me go back. I'm gonna take accountability. I was a classic underachiever,
Okay.
just to be flat out honest. So I was a C and D student, and that was pure because I would show up to do the minimum just to stay eligible.
Okay.
But I would
you
not.
did that for a reason, though.
What?
You were banking on football.
Correct.
As your career.
Correct. And I knew I wasn't dumb. I also have a bad habit of allowing people to think the worst of me so I can show you that you're mistaken.
Right.
But I didn't learn that side of it to kind of like college, getting stuff together. But that was it. My sophomore year, I was one of the bigger kids in the school, obviously. And so if the football team was around and you cracked a joke and I laughed, I got in trouble. And I'm like,
Right.
he was the one who was saying all the goofy stuff.
Right.
And I laughed. Yes, I laughed
Right.
loud or whatever. And I would get in trouble. And then I had a teacher and it was revealed, she ended up getting fired, was like lying on my grades all year. She was writing down my accurate grades in English. And she was literally giving me a U in conduct and a U in the classroom every 6 weeks. And it's the only time in my life I've ever told my parents, please go to parent-teacher conference.
Right.
Please. Just seriously.
Now, unbeknownst to you at the time, but a lot of us a little bit older, this happened comparably to African American men in a school system, right? That they would downgrade you in terms of academics, or say that you were delayed
Yep.
mentally, that you couldn't be in the classroom, right?
And, I had that testing in elementary school. And I can vividly remember the lady saying, ain't nothing wrong with your son, Mrs. Richardson. This boy's bright.
Right.
He's just choosing to act the way he is, do what he's doing. But so high school, and then amidst of them finding out my real grade, the teacher was put on probation. They started investigating other stuff with other kids. And so I had a B in her class.
Okay.
And this was just by her grade. She was not smart enough to write down the wrong answer. She wrote down my correct grades. So opening up her grade book, my mother, we were sitting in the cafeteria at Mill my sophomore year, and she looked at the lady and said, I ain't the smartest woman in the world, but these 80s don't equate to a U. So that started. So then the school, and I'll say his name because I don't like him, and it just is what it is. Mr. Wilson, that was the principal, Dave Wilson. He told me say had me on academic and behavior probation.
Right.
And then in the summer, they sent me and that was by the end of the school year, because parent-teacher conference is in February.
Right.
This was all corrected. Grade we reflected right. I was supposed to be in good standing. And then in the summer, they're like, nah, you're still on academic and behavior probation.
Okay.
You got to come back in for an interview, to get off of this and be readmitted to Mill.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nah, screw y'all. And so I left.
Okay. And that's very plausible to do that, because that makes no sense.
Yeah, and we had just won the championship at Mill. I was primed to be the next guy on the line. I was replacing Marcus Green, who was an All-American and got a scholarship at Ohio State. I was his understudy by Coach Redmond's, appointment. But I went to PRP and which was my home school, and things were fine. It wasn't Mill.
Right.
I went to having schools interested in me just as a part-time starter at Mill as a sophomore, to going to PRP. Then it was the Camel. It went from UK, U of L, Cincinnati, Purdue, the bigger Division Ones, because we had guys that were getting attention. So if you showed up and played well and you had some size, you got attention.
Right.
So going to PRP, just by the design of the school, it became Cumberland, Moorhead, Pikeville, Camelsville, those type of things, which, just from a sports perspective, it's a massive drop off from UK, U of L, Cincinnati, those type of things.
A lot of people don't understand that. Based on the level of play of the school and how it's recognized, that's how scouts, they know where to go, because they base it off the program.
Yeah.
So if you go to a lower tier in terms of football, the lower level scholarships come to you.
Yeah, and it was just, now as an adult, I understand. Of course, as a kid, everybody's invincible. This doesn't apply to me. I'm still going to be. So, I don't regret any of my decisions, because that led me to Inside the Lines training with all of this stuff. And I continued that. I did a little better at PRP. So when I got there, Mill's classes and the rigor was more college-esque.
Okay.
PRP was show up, you'll be fine.
Okay.
And so when I was in regular classes, I believe it was honors and then advanced placement. So I put myself in honors classes for a bigger challenge, because in the regular classes, people were showing up with notebooks and packs of cigarettes and Black and Milds.
Okay.
And I'm like, this definitely ain't for me.
Right.
And I knew I still had to go going to the NFL, and I knew I had to go to college. So thus, I need to start getting it together.
Hello, I'm Dr. Swannie Jett, CEO for Park Duval Community Health Centers. We conduct WIC, nutrition, and open enrollment for healthcare. So this is a one-stop shop facility for everybody in the community.
My name is JT Douglas, and I am the Director of Development and Marketing here at Park Duval. I'm in charge of all of the fundraising efforts to help us do some of the great work we do here at Park Duval. The people that come to Park Duval, they're here for a reason. They're here to see us. They're coming to the health center because they don't feel good. And I think it's great work that our physicians and providers do for those patients by helping them.
So you say you went into a depressed state. Unpackage that for me, because I had to unpackage that when I had that conversation with Albert Green, one of the people that you followed, when he realized that he wasn't gonna make it.
Disappointment in self. You start second guess. You 2020 of the past, 2020 vision of the past. Like what could I've done better? What should I've done better? Do I still got a chance? Your reality setting in. So it was kind of literally lost. I'm just applying for jobs. Jobs are telling me I'm too qualified. I don't know what I want to do in my life, because up until that time, my life looked like I was going to be married, play in the NFL with a big house, have 2 Rottweilers and 4 kids. Like I had to paint it out.
You had to paint it out.
So, not having any of that pushing 25, it's like, who are you?
Right.
So I had to develop myself again. A lot of people called me Hulk as a kid growing up. I mean, that was appointed by my grandmother as an infant, but it just followed me even to this day. So then Anthony was introduced as Anthony. I got to kind of turn a new leaf, be a new person, create a new you.
How long did it take?
Until present, like I'm still working on it. It's evolving every day. I don't want to be stuck in who I was.
Right.
So it's always want to create a new version of myself. I'm still working on it, but until I started Inside the Lines, which was roughly around 2012, where Inside the Lines was started. This was before it became a 501c3. Mm-hmm. So applying for jobs, and with criminal justice background, applied for an investigator with social worker, with Child Protective Services. So I was on the adolescent unit working with kids, and before joining Child Protective Services, I had a clear picture of what a bad parent looked like,
right,
or a good parent looked like.
Right.
So I learned a lot about parenting from parents that whether had legit cases or illegit cases, and people just calling them in, whatever the case may be. I hated the job, but it gave me insight on parenting.
Okay.
But I started coaching. And so realizing kids needed mentorship, families need mentorship on how to just navigate life. There's barriers in between parents and kids, and some kids don't want to talk to their parents because it could be valid reasons, it could be bad reasons. But spinning off of that, like I said, start coaching. I started training kids after practice in Swannie Park, in my house, at my house, in my side yard. Start tutoring kids in my house, and pretty much did that from like 2012 on. But when I realized I truly hated CPS, and what was really the catalyst, my then girlfriend Danielle, now wife, she became pregnant with our first kid.
Okay.
And so I knew when she told me Labor Day weekend of 2011, I knew I didn't want to raise a kid on a $33,000 salary. So I had started my alternative certification program to become a teacher at Georgetown College. And that was kind of under the advice of a person then. It was an acquaintance, but now a friend, Robert Gunn. Mm-hmm. So he kind of put that bug in my ear. He was an assistant principal at, I believe it was Olmsted North at the time, the boys' school. So it kind of got me going there. And I had a couple other people put that seed into my head, because I was also, before I started with CPS, I was substitute teaching adults.
Okay.
So like D'Artagnan Ramsey, Dr. D'Artagnan Ramsey, he was one of the mentors that helped me put in that path too. Just kind of spoke life into it.
Right.
Never considered it. But in 2013, I got my first job certified as a teacher at CPS, with JCPS. And I did it for 10 years. And, but then I made Inside the Lines a 501c3 in 2017. And, just realizing that there's always going to be a need for educational help. There's always going to be a need for kids that want to be trained to get better at said sport. And then there was always going to be a room for mentorship. Like, everybody needs a mentor.
So I know you had Inside the Lines in the back of your mind for a while, even when you was at JCPS. What made you finally make the transition?
You mean quitting JCPS? My father passed in 2021. So being in a lost state, I'm sure depression, anxiety building, and I was really close to exploding, and whatever that looks like. It's just on edge, you know what I mean? My dad was my best friend. We lost him to ALS, and it was abrupt. Like, we didn't, obviously in the onset might have been years on, but he didn't start showing signs of falling until January of 2021, and he passed away June 24th of 2021. So it was kind of a quick transition to go from him driving and falling to nursing home.
Right.
And so it was a dark time for me. So going into that school year, he actually died the last day of summer school that I worked. Okay. But going into that school year, it was just kind of low patience and stuff like that. And I was a behavior coach at Waller. And just going through some unique experiences that I wouldn't let a grown man do to me.
Right.
That I had to accept and receive from kids. And I didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel of JCPS. Like, there was no clear direction from top down to say, this is the direction that JCPS is going. These are the steps we're going to take to correct these issues. And there's no accountability for parents and kids. So with those instances happen, like, I just kind of quit.
So, one of the things I hear constantly is how kids respond to teachers and how they act out. And the teacher has no ability to deter that behavior. And the parents are not being held accountable as well.
No,
so
not even close.
Break that down.
So the common response is, you ain't my daddy, you can't tell me what to do. And my response would be, I know I ain't your daddy because you wouldn't be in this type of school.
Right.
But again, like, kids are damaging property, cars, and we got to call our own insurance company and pay the deductible to get this fixed. Like, JCPS is not seeking punitive damages to the family. They told us we could get lawyers, but I'd rather pay my $500 deductible versus going to get a lawyer on retainer, taking this family through legal stuff, just to say Johnny broke my window or he danced on top of my hood and dented my car. So, like, that type of stuff.